Daniel Kade stood outside the iron gates of his own mansion, his fingers wrapped tightly around the worn strap of a small travel bag. Inside, laughter drifted through the evening air, glasses clinking, music playing, voices rising in carefree celebration. The house glowed with warmth and light, yet he felt like a stranger, staring in from the dark. It hadn't always been this way. There was a time when Daniel had nothing but calloused hands and stubborn determination. He had worked under the scorching sun, lifting bricks, pouring concrete, sleeping on cold floors at construction sites just to save money. Over the years, that relentless effort grew into something massive: Kade Urban Developments, a company that reshaped skylines and turned Daniel into a man people admired from a distance. But somewhere along the way, admiration had replaced connection. His home had become quieter in the ways that mattered. Conversations grew shorter. Laughter felt rehearsed. His wife Marissa smiled often, but rarely at him. His son, Ethan, spoke more about investments than anything personal. His sister Lydia and cousin Victor visited frequently, but their visits always seemed to orbit around business, money, or inheritance. Daniel had started to notice something unsettling. The more he provided, the less he felt seen. It was as though his worth had been quietly reduced to numbers on a balance sheet. That question stayed with him for weeks, whispering at the back of his mind, until he could no longer ignore it. What would happen if everything disappeared? If the wealth, the comfort, the status, all of it vanished overnight? Would anyone still stand beside him? He decided he needed an answer. The plan was simple, but it carried a weight he hadn't fully prepared for. He handed temporary control of his company to his lawyer, Mr. Salim, under strict instructions to maintain operations without interference. Then he stripped himself of everything that defined his status.
Before we continue,
his phone, his
there's
watch,
something you should
his
know.
tailored suits, all left behind. In their place were worn clothes, dust-stained shoes, and the appearance of a man who had lost everything. For 1 week, he would disappear from the life everyone recognized. And then he would return, not as Daniel Kade, the successful businessman, but as a man with nothing left. Now, standing at the gates, he exhaled slowly and stepped forward. The moment he entered the compound, the laughter began to fade. One by one, heads turned. Conversations stalled mid-sentence. Glasses froze halfway to lips. At first, there was confusion. Then, recognition. And finally, discomfort. Marissa was the first to speak. Her voice carried uncertainty, but not warmth. "Daniel, what is this?" He looked at her, searching her face for something familiar. "Things went wrong," he said quietly. "I lost everything." The words hung in the air, heavy and unwelcome. Lydia's expression hardened almost immediately. "You don't mean that," she said. "How does someone just lose everything?" Victor let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "So the great empire finally crumbled?" Ethan avoided his father's eyes entirely, shifting uncomfortably as though hoping the moment would pass if he didn't engage. Daniel swallowed, the weight of their reactions settling deeper than he expected. "I just need somewhere to stay for a while," he said, "until I figure things out." Silence followed. Not the kind of silence filled with concern, but one thick with hesitation and quiet judgment. Marissa took a small step back. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but Daniel saw it clearly. She said nothing. Victor shook his head. "This is a lot," he muttered, already turning slightly away. Lydia crossed her arms. "We all have responsibilities, Daniel. We can't just carry someone else's burden." Ethan finally spoke, but his voice was low, detached. "Maybe you should handle this first. Get back on your feet." Daniel stood there, the distance between them feeling wider than the entire estate. He had built everything around them. Yet in this moment, there was no place for him inside it. He nodded slowly, more to himself than to anyone else, and turned toward the gate. "Dad, wait." The voice cut through the tension like something steady and certain. Nina stepped forward, weaving through the frozen crowd. Her eyes were fixed on him, not with doubt, not with embarrassment, but with something he hadn't seen in a long time. Concern. "You're not going anywhere," she said gently. Lydia scoffed. "Nina, you don't understand." "I understand enough," Nina replied, her voice calm but firm. "If he's lost everything, then he needs us." She reached for Daniel's bag without hesitation. "Come inside." For a moment, no one moved. The contrast was undeniable. Where others had stepped back, she stepped forward. Daniel followed her quietly. The days that followed revealed more than words ever could. Nina stayed close. She cooked simple meals, sat with him, and listened without rushing him to explain. She offered what little she had without making it feel like a sacrifice. At one point, she even suggested selling her car to help him start over. Meanwhile, the rest of the house adjusted in a different way. Victor kept his distance, rarely appearing when Daniel was around. Lydia complained openly about how the situation might affect the family's reputation. Ethan limited his interactions to brief, awkward exchanges. Marissa lingered on the edges, watching more than speaking, her silence still heavy with uncertainty. Daniel observed everything, every glance, every absence, every quiet decision. By the 7th day, the answer he had been searching for was no longer a question. That evening the family gathered again, though the atmosphere lacked the carefree energy it once had. Conversations were cautious, as though everyone was waiting for something to shift. Daniel walked into the room, no longer in worn clothes, but composed, steady, unmistakably himself. Confusion spread quickly. "What's going on?" Victor asked, frowning. Daniel looked at them, his expression calm. "The company was never gone," he said. "Nothing was lost." The words landed like a shockwave. Marissa stared at him. "What do you mean?" "It was a test," Daniel continued. "I needed to know who would still stand with me if there was nothing left to gain." Anger rose almost immediately. "You deceived us," Lydia snapped. "This wasn't fair," Victor added. Ethan looked away again, but this time there was something heavier behind it. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. Instead, he turned to Nina. "You didn't hesitate," he said softly. "Not for a second." Nina said nothing, but her expression held steady. "You saw me," he continued, "when there was nothing left to see." The room fell quiet again, but this time the silence carried a different weight. Daniel looked around at the people he had spent years providing for, and for the first time he understood the truth clearly. Wealth had built the house around them, but it had never guaranteed a home within it. Later that night, as the lights dimmed and the voices faded, Daniel sat beside Nina in the quiet of the living room. There were no grand speeches left, no anger to release, just understanding. And in that stillness, one truth remained stronger than everything he had built. When the money disappeared, so did the illusion. And what was left behind was all that had ever truly mattered.